Now to one of the most anticipated and wide-ranging inquiries in Queensland history. The investigation into this year's devastating floods began its public hearings in Brisbane today, examining everything from the performance of insurance companies to urban planning. One of the most controversial issues under scrutiny is the operation of the Wivenhoe Dam, as Peter McCutcheon reports.
Come on! Come on!
By the badly eroded banks of the Brisbane River, cattle stud breeder JOCELYN Bailey is back to work. The grass may be green, but much of this property was damaged in the recent floods.
We've had to hand feed cattle and fence the river off, and I think that the impact to me alone emotionally has been very severe.
One emotion this farmer admits to is anger. Anger with the operators of the upstream dam for the way in which they released water during January's extraordinary downpour.
This was entirely preventable, and it was a man-made flood due to the actions of the Wivenhoe Dam operators.
On a scale which had previously been unimaginable.
Accusations against the Wivenhoe Dam operators will now be forensically examined as part of a commission of inquiry into the Queensland floods, which began its public hearings in Brisbane today. But while some blame Wivenhoe for their troubles, others are warning against rushing to judgment.
Of course, everybody knows that Wivenhoe Dam caused the flood. The flood wasn't caused by Wivenhoe Dam, the flood was caused by a lot of water coming out of the sky.
It was only last October when crowds gathered at Wivenhoe to witness an awe-inspiring display. The drought had finally ended, and this was the dam's biggest water release in more than a decade.
This is better than wet and wild. You're drawing bigger crowds.
It is, and safety is the important thing for us at the moment, and SEQ Water are managing safety in such a way where we've got controlled areas to view the dam.
6 months later, the releases were no longer a curiosity, but a disaster. Days of extraordinary rainfall in early January filled Wivenhoe to its brim, and water had to be released to protect the structure of the dam wall.
We are now seeing 1 million megalitres, or 2 Sydney harbours, flow into the Wivenhoe catchment every day.
These releases, combined with downstream flows, inundated the Queensland capital, destroying thousands of homes. But further upriver, the sheer force of the releases destroyed the banks of many properties, and landholders fear land slumps like this one can never be repaired. The river flats between Brisbane and the dam have become a dead zone.
Geez, it looks like a mess.
Yes, it is a mess, and this has occurred all up and down the river.
JOCELYN Bailey and neighbouring farmers have a long-running dispute with the dam operator, going back well before last summer. They've been calling for more water to be released over longer periods, rather than in short, sharp bursts, which leads to erosion. The mid-Brisbane River irrigators argue that during those days of extreme rainfall in January, dam operators were too slow to respond, forcing a spectacular jump in the amount of water released over a very short period. The farmers have released an alternative set of numbers, in which releases start earlier, without the need for the surge that resulted in much of the damage along the river.
It's been a previous history of mismanagement of the river that is particularly galling in that they haven't listened to local landowners and farmers and irrigators.
One person who helped draw up the original rules for managing the river is former engineer and now psychologist, Professor NEAL ASHKANASY. He says the earlier release scenario is simply impossible under the dam's legally binding operating manual, as it would have inundated low-level bridges at a time the operators thought they had the flood under control.
Do you accept that the inundation across Brisbane would have been less severe if the operators of the dam had begun releasing water earlier?
Well, that sentence has got a magic word in it, and the magic word is if. So if this and if that. It's easy to say that after the event.
Dash 8 on Echo, cross 3473's got the rapid.
Professor ASHKANASY says the dam operators are a bit like air traffic controllers, required to follow a very rigid set of rules. Although during the flood, they were working in an unprecedented scenario, a bit like air controllers landing a plane for the first time.
Is there an argument for saying that the rules governing the operation of the dam are too rigid?
That could be true. And following the inquiry, further calculations will be done based on the experience that we've had in January, and the rules can be modified. But once those rules are in, then they really have to be followed.
There's little dispute that Brisbane's main dam did prevent some of the flooding. SEQ Water estimates that without Wivenhoe, the water level at Brisbane's CBD would have been 2 metres higher. But the Commission of Inquiry will be looking at whether the dam could have done better.
Surely the dam operators, with their engineering backgrounds and modelling and all the information available at their fingertips, could have been proactive in releasing water earlier to prevent what happened.
Professor ASHKANASY, however, would prefer the Commission not to look for scapegoats, but to address broader questions about how to live in a subtropical floodplain. And he warns that compared to the floods of the 19th century, January's deluge wasn't particularly big.
The simple fact is that Wivenhoe Dam has a finite capacity. Even if you decided that take the whole dam out of the water supply system and use it only for flood mitigation, it's still just a puddle when the really, really big floods come.
Peter McCutcheon with that report.